Welcome back. It's been a busy day in Washington, D.C. Peter Strzok testified about his role in the investigation of alleged Russian interference in the 2016 presidential campaign. Also today, the Department of Justice announced they'll reopen the case of Emmett Till, the 14-year-old boy murdered in 1955 for allegedly whistling to a white woman. Well, Wallace Ford is the chair of the Public Administration Department at Medgar Evers College. He's here to help us make sense of it all. And thank you very much indeed for joining us, Wallace. I apologize, we introduced you a bit earlier. You weren't actually there. We're hugely grateful to you for being there now. And in sometimes combative testimony, Peter Strzok defended his role during the 2016 presidential campaign. Some have accused him of bias. What's your take on that issue?
Well, you know, there is the notion of trying to look at someone's personal opinions and perspectives and then how they apply those personal opinions in their actions. And it appears, and that's when you have bias. It's not enough just to say, okay, I believe this way, I believe it one way and another. In this particular instance, what we're seeing, and I think it's really a major, major distraction for the American people in the world, is focus on this presumed bias, although there's no evidence, none, indicating that Mr. Strzok or his colleagues who have any animus with respect to the candidate Donald Trump actually took any actions to support their beliefs about whatever they may have thought about Donald Trump. And so, and indeed, if the FBI agents were really biased against Donald Trump in 2016, what they could have done is leaked information that his campaign was being investigated for ties to Russia. That would have hurt his campaign, and he probably wouldn't have become president of the United States. So it's absurd, it's a distraction, and what people really need to think about and talk about, and what this Republican Congress will not do, is look into the fact that the Trump campaign and the Trump administration it worked very closely and communicated regularly with Russian operatives in a knowing fashion. And even to this very day, where you see Donald Trump attacking our allies in NATO while at the same time saying that Putin is a pretty good guy, gives you a pretty good idea of what our real concerns should be. It's a republic. It is the oldest trick in the book. Don't believe your lying eyes. Listen to what I'm telling you instead, and that's what's going on right now.
Nevertheless, of course, Peter Strzok left disgraced after his text messages were released detailing his alleged bias towards Donald Trump. Of course, Republicans currently control Congress. Was today's testimony an overreach on the part of Republicans to disqualify allegations of collusion?
Well, it's the exact point I was trying to make, and you stated it quite eloquently. In point of fact, it is an effort on the part of the Republicans to distract the American people and the world from the investigation of Donald Trump and his colleagues with respect to Russia by pointing out these, what are, in effect, are meaningless or items of no real import in the scheme of things. Because to the extent that Mr. Strzok or anybody else in the FBI may have not liked Donald Trump, and people are free in America not to like people, he never took any actions in support of that dislike. And so you really have a nothing burger, if you will, there, but they're trying to turn it into a banquet.
Well, let's move on to today's announcement by the Department of Justice that they plan to reopen the case of Emmett Till. I mean, for those of us who don't know, help us understand what is going on here. Who is Emmett Till, and why is this case so important?
Well, those are two separate questions, of course. Emmett Till was a young man who in 1955, at the age of 14, was lynched. That is, he was killed in an extralegal fashion by a group of white men who thought that he may have said some smart remarks or to a white woman. He was beaten, he was shot, he was mutilated, he was drowned, he was killed. It's a horrible, horrible act. It took place in 1955. one of the things that came out of that, and unfortunately, and this is one of the things we have to point out, thousands, literally thousands of black American men, women, and children have been lynched between 1880 and 1955. The number will never be truly calculated because many of these lynchings weren't reported. This one we know about in part because Mr. Emmett Till's mother did in fact allow for photographs to be taken of his mutilated body and his abused body in a casket, which were then published all over the world, and people could see in black and white just how cruel, just how vicious, just how beastly the white supremacist domination of black Americans in this country manifested itself. So that's who Emmett Till was. Okay, what this action by the Trump administration, Department of Justice, in reopening the case at this point, because there was a trial and it took about an hour for the jury to come back with a verdict of not guilty. And there's been other discussions with respect and investigations with respect to that. But frankly, everyone who's been involved in that case is dead. Okay, and so whatever may happen with this reopening of the investigation is not really the point. Because it is a distraction. Again, once more from the fact, remember, this is the Donald Trump Department of Justice. This is the Department of Justice headed by Jeff Sessions, who is taking actions as we speak to see that more black Americans are incarcerated for longer periods of time and are looking to deny the civil rights, the constitutionally given civil rights of black Americans to vote and to actively enjoy their citizenship. I'll tell you, I've got actually something here. I'll read these names off very quickly. Harry Moore, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, Eric Gardner, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin. These are all black Americans who were killed either extralegally or by the police, where we don't have a resolution with respect to, or a resolution with respect to who killed these people. And certainly people have not been brought to justice in these particular instances. And so if the Department of Justice and the Trump administration were being genuine, were being honest, were being authentic with respect to seeking justice for black Americans, they'd be looking at these names, they'd be looking at these cases, but they're not, and they won't. Okay, you had Donald Trump saying that he would pardon Muhammad Ali when Muhammad Ali's conviction was overturned by the Supreme Court 30 years before Donald Trump ever became president of the United States. So it is an insult to black Americans, and it's an insult to people of goodwill in America and around the world to talk about reopening the Emmett Till case when we have live cases right now that need the attention of the Department of Justice, and I predict will not get the attention of the Department of Justice because the president is a racist president, the Attorney General is a racist Attorney General, and those are policies and those are opinions and those are perspectives that are actually being put into action, unlike what we were talking about with FBI agent Strzok.
And whilst, of course, recognizing the points you're making, Emmett Till is the big story today. And you told our producer you have a personal memory of this case. I was wondering if you might be inclined to share your reflections with us.
Sure, I'd be glad to. As I said, I was 5 years old. I was 5 years old when this particular matter occurred, when this incident occurred, and I was living in Japan. I was born in Harlem, but I was living in Japan certainly with my parents, and there wasn't a lot of ways to get news about what was going on in America at the time, except through Jet Magazine, certainly Black America, through Jet Magazine. We didn't have cable news, we didn't have CNN, we didn't have Arise TV or anything like that. And so I remember seeing Jet Magazine every week in our household, and when this particular issue came in several months later, of course, I was horrified as a little 5-year-old as to what the heck is going on in this country that I'm going to be going back to someday. And it was welcome to the reality of what it means to be black in America. That was one of my first real lessons because I was only 5 at the time. I didn't have many. I left America when I was 4, so I didn't have many of those lessons before then. But that was one of my first real lessons. And for a lot of other Americans, both black and white, to see in a photograph what it really means to be a black person in America, where white supremacy and the type of violence that is practiced against black Americans takes place.
You had to go through that experience, but I want to thank you very much indeed, Wallace Ford, for coming into Arise News. Wallace Ford, of course, the chair of the Public Administration Department at Medgar Evers College. You're watching Arise America. More after this.
to coast. Every culture, every angle. This is Arise America.